When I woke him up for school, he wasn't there. I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes. About 3 minutes in, give or take, I was on the phone with my husband. I said, I can't find him.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. I don't like that little chuckle in there, and I don't like how quickly she realizes it's an emergency. 3 minutes? Has she even looked outside? I also don't like that she doesn't, in her story, she doesn't make her child breakfast. There's something about that she gets up at 6 in the morning, and I think is supposed to catch the bus at 6:10. There doesn't seem to be any kind of caregiving in this scenario. But all of this is speculation. Is there any real evidence to go on? What is the last sighting? Is it legitimate? And what are the statistics surrounding this particular type of situation? But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. I have written a book on a case that is quite similar to this one, the disappearance of Nora Quoirin. It's a child, also same age, about 15 years old, French-Irish teenager that went missing in the Malaysian jungle. If you're interested in this sort of thing, you might want to read that book. It might provide you with some insight. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, in the category of child homicide for school-aged children, did you know the USA has the world's highest rates for child homicide among developed countries? I didn't know that. I was quite surprised at that. Now, let's acknowledge at this point there is virtually zero evidence of foul play. Even so, we're going to explore this as a possibility. We will, in a forthcoming analysis, explore the likelihood that Sebastian ran away or wandered off or some other accidental scenario. We're going to examine each in tune, and then we're certainly going to need to start gravitating from the one to the other. Now, on the question, what is Sebastian's last proof of life? According to Terry Dean, one of my patrons on Patreon, I've actually met her as well in America. She's been obsessively following this case, and she says, it was confirmed by law enforcement and Seth that Sebastian was seen on video leaving the Texas Roadhouse in Hendersonville, as far as I know, with his mother Katie after dinner. That was Sunday night. Meanwhile, Chris Proudfoot, Sebastian's stepdad, he was apparently out of town in Memphis working on a construction job. Memphis is more than a stone's throw from Hendersonville. It's around a day's drive. But one also has to wonder why the stepdad was working on a Sunday. According to Terry, local media and Seth also confirmed that Sebastian was seen on video taking out the trash when they returned that night. This is important because it seems to confirm, to her credit, that there is video evidence of Sebastian not only at home, but taking out the trash on the night he disappeared, just as his mother, Katie, has said. As I say, to her credit, that part does seem to be true. Terry says over a week later, Seth changed his tune and stated that the video was too dark and he couldn't be sure it was him. None of these videos have been released by law enforcement. Well, even so, it likely is a child and not an adult taking out the trash. We would assume law enforcement have seen the video, and based on this video, this is why they don't seem to believe there's foul play. But of course, without being able to see the CCTV, it's hard to speculate. I'm still inclined to give the mom the benefit of the doubt, certainly on this point. Now, Seth confirmed Sebastian's clothing on a late night live stream, then, according to Terry, got his hand slapped by law enforcement for disclosing that. That brings us now to the next sort of area. the dad going back to work in the middle of the search. Now, it's unclear what the economic circumstances are of the Proudfoods. Does anyone know? At face value, they seem to live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. Well, what does that mean? Sometimes, of course, a nice house in a nice neighborhood can end up becoming a millstone around the necks of those who live there. And we saw that in the Chris Watts case. We saw that more recently in the murder trial of Michelle Troconis, dealing with the death of Jennifer Dulos in Connecticut. Beautiful house, a lot of horrible things going on in the background, horrible, terrible finances. It's also interesting to me the dislocatedness of this case, where in the fabric of November 25th, no one is really home for much of the day. We saw a little bit of that in the Letitia Stauch case. I've also written a book on that titled Boy Interrupted. The stepdad is far afield working. In that case, the mother, the biological mother, was far afield. She was in Myrtle Beach. In this case, you have the stepdad far afield working, and during the search phase, both parents decide to leave their home. And I think this happened about 3 weeks ago. I believe 3 weeks ago, Chris Proudfoot said, I'm going back to work.
I left early February and then didn't come back till February 26th, the morning he was missing.
So you were not home from the time you left early February till Feb 26. Is that right?
Correct, ma'am.
Where were you living in Memphis?
I have an RV trailer that I stay in at an RV park.
We're given information that you guys have left the home. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
I'm going back to work.
You're going back to work. What about you, Miss Proudfoot?
No, I'm not going back to work. Not yet, at least.
Did you leave the home also, Miss Proudfoot?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
To accompany my husband going back to work, and then I'm coming back.
So Katie is an installation technician. She also has a job, and yet she's actually abandoned her job to join Chris. And so that certainly, it shows that Katie's prioritizing her new husband over the interests of her missing son, in the sense that while others are looking for her son, she isn't. Think also about this thing of going on to podcasts, going on to, being interviewed ostensibly about the interests of one's child, but you not even in your home area participating in that. And so through this action, and actions speak louder than words, she also shows that she prioritizes his work. She prioritizes him, Chris Proudfoot, even above her own work. And clearly it's not essential that she go with him to a construction site. For me, this is another small red flag. That brings us to spousal revenge. Now, if something happened to Sebastian, I'm less sure that any of the men mentioned in the story are directly involved. There may be an indirect aspect, however. It does seem clear that there's no love lost between Katie Proudfoot and Sebastian. Pardon me, not Sebastian, Seth. Maybe a bit of a slip there. And in this sense, another red flag rises. Spousal revenge is a classic motive in child homicide. In Greece, for example, the motive for over a quarter of all child homicides was spousal revenge. I haven't spoken to them for 2 weeks. It's something that Seth said about 3 weeks ago. He said they're not talking to me. So there does seem to be a bit of a gripe between the two spouses. Finally, let's deal with statistics. If foul play was a factor here, when it comes to young children, statistically the perpetrator tends to be someone they already know, someone they're familiar with a median age between 19 to 35, according to one study. In a 21-year period between 1999 and 2020, 38,000 children died by homicide in the USA. Globally, children aged 15 to 19 years constitute almost 60%, two-thirds. And this is global child homicides, right? Followed by children under the age of 5 years. That's 20%. So, 2/3 of child homicides are basically teenagers. Overall, parents committed over 56% of child homicides, 58% female, and 46% male child homicides. Acquaintances committed 12.6% of these crimes. Almost a tenth of child homicides had missing information on the perpetrator. The largest proportion of parental homicides of children was found in high-income countries, more than 2/3. The USA has the highest rate for child homicide in developed countries. The most dangerous time for a child born in America is the day of its birth. The safest period is middle childhood before adolescence. Sebastian was clearly slap bang in the middle of that difficult teenage period. And we've actually heard Chris Proudfoot talking about it. And obviously the autism aspect would have made this period even more challenging. During the pandemic, child homicide rates in the USA rose by 28%. The homicide rate for children has increased by an average 4.3% per year since 2013 in America. What this indicates potentially is the potential relevance of when the incident happened, talking about in terms of these pandemic statistics, at the very end of a weekend. Not only that, we know that Katie and Chris had been separated for an extended period, I think almost the entire February. They were basically, he was in Memphis and she was in Hendersonville. And so it was at the end of the weekend, near the end of February, that this incident happened. What the pandemic did was force families to be in one another's face for extended periods, but it also led to the separations of loved ones. That is when and how bad stuff can happen, when there's already underlying bad stuff brewing. I'm not going to take it further than that. In our next analysis, we'll examine the possibilities surrounding accidental death. Thank you for listening. Look out for my next analysis on the Amanda Knox email, and I'll see you guys next time.